Hey friends, it is Wednesday. You know what that means? It is Ask a Flower Farmer, and I'm so glad to be here, y'all. I'm adjusting my phone. I can't find the right knob to turn. So if all of a sudden you're looking at the ceiling or the floor, you know why. So anyway, I think we're good to go. So I hope everybody's having a great start to their week. This is a super exciting time in the gardening and farming world, right? I mean, we are knee deep in starting seeds, planting stuff, perhaps. We are on the verge probably next week of planting that very early spring planting of cool flowers. My Lizianthus are due to come next week. Let's see, there's just a lot of really exciting stuff. And thanks so much for joining me here. So if you're new, the way this works is I will do my best to answer your questions about growing cut flowers, whether you're a flower farmer or a home gardener, seed starting. We can talk about cool flowers. We can even talk about farm dogs and or anything about flower farming business. I am happy to help you in any way that I can during this time. And if you do want to ask a question, you just post it in that little bubble down below that has the question mark in it. That way I don't lose your message in the feed of all the names here. So while I'm waiting for you guys to post your questions down in the bubble where the question mark is, I'll just tell you a little bit. So I think I probably told y'all last week that we have started another new show, so another live shop show, and that's on Wednesdays at 2 o'clock, and that would be today, and it's really a lot of fun. So if you just kind of think QVC with me and some great gardening stuff, seeds and tools and supplies. And so you can get the phone app from your phone app store. Just go there and search Gardener's Workshop Live Shop and just download the app and then just join me live at 2 o'clock. In the app, you can also watch previous shows. You can shop in there. And I know this is confusing to people, but what you have to actually remember is our phone app and our website are two totally separate stores, right? I mean, websites don't offer live shopping options. Believe me, we've tried. So it's two totally separate things. And what that means is sometimes you'll hear about not only specials, but products that are only on the app or only on the website. So you kind of have to go in there and look around. So if you get the app, you can go in and shop lots of products, free seed shipping in there. And we always have special offers and special bundles and stuff. So I would love for you to join me. And it gives me the opportunity to give you a little bit more information on stuff, right? So it's a lot of fun. It takes a lot of work. Trust me, it takes 3 or 4 people to get the show lined up for us to be able to do that. I mean, they have to put inventory in, da-da-da-da-da. And anyway, so it's really been a big hit, and we are just super excited to do it during the seed starting season. And, today I'm going to be talking about a lot of fun stuff that, if you hop to it and buy stuff today, they'll drop it in the mail tomorrow. There is a chance you could still get it by Mother's Day. Not Mother's Day. I got Mother's Day on the brain. Valentine's Day. Maybe. We can't guarantee it, but we'll see. If you live in California, maybe not. But if you're on the Midwest or on the East Coast, that's a good chance. So let me take a look and see what your questions are. So Hoofprint Farm, and I'm guessing in Rhode Island. What cover crop can I plant now, and how long will it need to grow? Then what do I do? I listened to the cover crop podcast, but this is just my first time cover cropping. So I don't know if maybe you are in Rhode Island. This is not a good time to plant cover crop. Really, regardless of, unless you're in the deep, deep south, like in zone 10 or 9, because even cool season cover crops need heat to germinate and grow. So it's really not the optimal time. And, I want people one of the things that I like people to really understand is I didn't cover crop for years while I was figuring out my farming rotation and I mean, that's a huge thing to bite off, flower farming is, or just farming. Adding cover crops in, you really have to think it all the way through. And, I talk about that in Vegetables Love Flowers. There's like a couple of pages designated to say, if you're a home gardener or if you don't have a tractor, you're a small farmer, it tells you which crop. I only recommend 2 cover crops people start with. One's warm, buckwheat. One's cool crimson clover. And it's too early. Buckwheat is a warm season, which I would guess that would probably be your next window of opportunity. We have the seed available on our website, not in our phone app. It doesn't let us do by the pound. So you can find it over there, and it comes with instructions. And then my book, Vegetables Love Flowers, also has some information, because here's what's so important. It's not that you just get when you plant it at the right time. You have to extinguish it, meaning end its life at the right time, or it gets tough and old, impossible to turn under. It can become a seedy, weedy kind of plant if you allow it to go to seed, and it broadcasts seeds everywhere. So there's a lot more to it. And so I say to people, just keep adding compost to your soil until you get your head wrapped around the whole process of gardening and farming, the seasons, then throw in some cover crops. And I would say buckwheat is probably the easiest one, but you wouldn't plant that until it's time for you to plant a tomato. Sorry, y'all, went down a rabbit hole, didn't I? Jen, I'm a first-time eucalyptus seed starter. I was lucky enough to get them from your shopping app last fall. Congratulations. We do, I think, have 3 currently in stock. And I just started mine. Do you have any tips or tricks? I know they take a while to germinate. I'm going to be using soil blocks. So, Jen, mine actually germinated, much to my surprise, fairly quickly, like 5 days, I think, or something. But you have to remember, eucalyptus is from Australia, where they like it warm. And so, seedling heat mat for sure. And keep them moist. You sow the seed, I believe, on the surface. I don't even remember. I've got 3 little trays of 20 each going on the farm. I will say that the parvula gum eucalyptus, which I know we have that seed in stock, which is the little leaf one that's it's almost, I want to say, an evergreen color. It's not that blue tealy kind of color. My favorite. Not only is it the strongest germinator of all of them, it actually wintered over on our farm. We had to provide protection, but it even went through the winter blast. So warmth and moisture is my tips for starting eucalyptus. Carla asks, can compost get too old to use? My blocks aren't germinating and growing as good as last year. That's a loaded question, Carla. It can get too old if it's out in the rain and leaching, you know what I mean, being rained on, and perhaps the nutrients have come, run off from it, but not normally, especially if you're keeping it indoors. But surely if you're having an overall, meaning more, when you have multiple germination failures or poor germinations, it's obviously environmental, whether it's your soil, which it's not often the case. I mean, it has to be pretty bad stuff for something like that to happen. Oftentimes it's temperature, watering or overwatering. So not likely, but possible. I hope that helps. I would really take back, I will never forget the time that back in our high production years when I was like a crazy woman, y'all. I mean, all I did was farm. My brain was on farm 24/7 from like February to November. And I had we had like 8,000 Lizzie plants planted. And one end of a bed started doing something kind of funky. I mean, they were like getting ready to start blooming like in probably 2 or 3 weeks. I was freaking out. I thought some disease was seizing my Lizianthus. And I reached out to the disease guy through the Cut Flower Association. He was on our Facebook group, and he would like answer questions and stuff. So I took a picture and sent it in, and he replied to me. He said, Are you watering that Lizianthus? It looks like it's just a little dry to me. Sure enough, y'all, I investigated. The irrigation was screwed up in that bed and the water wasn't making it to the end of the bed. I mean, how obvious was that? And I didn't even notice it. So I'm just saying, sometimes it's obvious stuff that we just don't see the trees for the forest, right? So take a look at what you're doing, Carla, is all I'm saying. You don't use domes on your cafeteria trays of soil blocks, do you? I do not use domes. I don't use domes or plastic on top of the soil blocks or anything that we germinate, only because, I don't know about you, but I'm not a very attentive seed starter, meaning I go into my seed starting grow room once a day. First thing in the morning, I go in, I water, move things that need to be moved, and that they don't see me again till the next day. When you use domes or plastic, this is Elliot Coleman's theory. That's why, and that's who I learned seed starting from, was Elliot Coleman. And his theory was that the dome or plastic trapping that moisture in there so much, you have to be very careful that you don't introduce disease, because that's like a perfect breeding ground for fungus and stuff, right? Like dampening off. So I do not use domes. However, we use what's called wide weave burlap. And so we just literally lay the burlap down on top of the blocks, and it's got pretty big holes, so it allows air circulation and air to evaporate, right, or moisture to evaporate, but it slows it down. I learned that trick from a vegetable farmer a few years ago that actually sprouted his carrots out in the field by sowing the seed and laying burlap over them. But you have to be very careful. At the first sign of seeds cracking, you need to get the burlap off, because they will quickly grow through the burlap, and then you pull the seedlings out by the roots when you pull the burlap off. So you have to be pretty careful. I mean, if I'm, because I'm only in there once a day, if they're looking close or I'm thinking they're going to sprout, I take the burlap off, because I don't want them to pop through in the afternoon and me lose them the next day. So that's why I don't use plastic. And frankly, we never found it necessary when you sow them properly and have the right conditions for them, right? So Pink Stem Farm, I want to fill 50 bouquets a week. How many seeds do I plant to meet that quota? Well, that's the $1 million question, Pink. First off, that definitely depends on, probably most of all, the skill of the grower. But I would definitely say that for 50 a week, saying if you really need to know how many stems you need, let's just guess 20 stems. So that's 1,000 stems a week. And you need, on average, a bucket holds probably 50 to 70 flowers. So that means you're going to need about 10, I'm just doing my thinking math in my head, 10 or actually more than that, like 15 buckets of flowers. And we would, if that was me, I don't know if you're doing subscriptions, I would have 25 at the first of the week and 25 at the end of the week. Harvesting twice a week is the best. And so you're going to need probably about 15 to 20 buckets of flowers to have enough to do that job. And I would say probably, I'm just thinking, all branching annuals, not counting sunflowers, which you should plant at least 100 sunflowers a week, single stemmed. So you have more than that, probably 150, so that you could put 3 in each bouquet. That just poofs it right up. And that's super easy to schedule, right? It's all the other stuff that you want to plant a lot of branching, come and cut again. And I would say 4 to 5 50-foot beds with the normal planting, the normal planting spacing, which all that information's in Vegetables Love Flowers. But doing those sunflowers every week is going to save your butt for sure. Last year, I had problems with little ants hanging out in my sunflower heads. What can I do to help keep them off? So ants can definitely be attracted to the sweet nectar that's on sunflowers. What's the matter?
I'm just listening.
I'm at the warehouse, if y'all didn't notice. So we got a crew here working there. They're poking fun at me, y'all. So sunflowers excrete nectar even if they're pollenless, and that nectar can begin to attract ants. In my experience, and this is not maybe everybody's, but are you perhaps cutting them too late? I mean, we cut our sunflowers while the petals are kind of tight, as the very first petal is lifting off the face of the center of the sunflower. You know, you look in there and you see all the petals. As soon as the first one begins to lift, that's when we cut them. They quickly open indoors, open completely, right? And so that's the first step. Be sure you're not cutting them too late. I mean, cut them early. And then also, if you have ants on your flowers in general, and this works for peonies too, if you're using, or if you were to put in a harvest bucket fresh cut flower food, which has sugar in it, all the ants are attracted to the sugar in the water, and unfortunately they all go for a little swim without a lifeguard on duty, and they all drowned. I mean, our peony buckets, that's how I get the ants off the peonies. Ants are great workers, by the way. I mean, they do a lot of good stuff for us, but we obviously don't want them on our flowers. So we don't usually use flower food that has sugar in it in our commercial lineup. That's what our customer gets to put in the vase, right? So when we have those problems, we would get some flower food, mix it up according to measurements for the water, put the flowers in there, and the next morning, chances are good, all the ants will be off your flowers and in the water, floating, feet up. So, hope that helps and doesn't hurt anybody. All right. What compost do you use with your soil blocking? So, we know that the best quality compost should always be reserved for your seed starting. I mean, you want the very, very best. I like using 1 to 2 year old compost, as Elliot Coleman recommends. It's just super mellow. It is just, and you sift it, so there's no chunks, there's no odor. It is just black gold. That's why they call it black gold. And so I would say to you, if you're like, oh my gosh, my compost is not that old, or I just purchased it, my recommendation is start today. We buy it in bags. We often don't have finished compost available for seed starting. So we will buy bags and just let them sit. Buy bags today for you to use next year is what I'm getting at. You have to think that far in advance. And the nice thing about that is you can just stack up several bags in a corner somewhere, put a sign on them, for seed starting 2024, and just leave it there. So any brand of compost, I've used them all. Composted manures, composted just regular organic compost. We do not use the sewer sludge based compost, which is so readily available here in the Mid-Atlantic. So give that a try. But the key is you want it to be super cooked, no fragrance and no chunks. You just want it to be super, like really, really luscious black soil is what you're looking for. Morning. I know you mentioned this before, but remind me when to take covers down after a cold spell. We've got to mid 40s in day, but still low 30s. Should I uncover the cool season beds that have Ag 19? So that's a really great question. This is the time of the year where it's real easy to have to go up and down. And in fact, I just looked at the weather this morning, and we were really cold. We had another little polar blast. I mean, it went down to like 13 or 14 or something last week. The wind chill was way down, and so my covers have been up, right? But we're now up for 2 weeks of the low at night is 40s, and the days are getting warmer, so we're going to have to take all of our covers down, and that means we have to start weeding and all those such things. So it's the daytime temperatures is what tell me when to take my covers down. When the heat starts climbing above 50 during the day, I take the covers down because it just gets so warm and toasty under there. It just really pushes your plants to start growing. Now, if it was March, that wouldn't be a problem. But now it's still a little early, right? And so usually, and what year is usual, never has it been usual, right? We tend to take our covers down between like the end of February, mid-March. I mean, we take them down. We leave them in the garden, y'all. I'm a neat freak, kinda. we used to just take them down and pack them up. Well, then you get, the 20-degree night in the early April, and you learn to not do that. So we leave the row covers out in the garden, but we just take them down and start our maintenance of doing hand weeding, and because we have to start netting. I mean, some of our buplurum is just climbing right away. I need to actually start netting and weeding and all such things. So covers down at 50 degrees during the day, and I put them up when we hit, especially now that they're a little bit bigger. If it's going into the 20s, I put them up for night. I mean, why risk damaging them at this stage, right? In your high production, did you drip irrigate your sunflowers? No. So sunflower, but you have to understand that I live in an area that gets like 50 some inches of rain a year. If you live in an area that doesn't get, we typically get more rain than we want around here is the way it seems. How many years have we installed irrigation all over the farm and then never literally needed it because it rains so much? But I will tell you, sunflowers will grow more uniform and faster with good moisture and good food in the soil. And so we do incorporate the organic dry fertilizer that you'll find on our website, not in the phone app. And it's OMRI certified chicken litter based and good stuff. And we hand water when we plant. That means every plant we know gets well watered in, and the only time we would think about watering again is if we just really hit a dry spell, and especially if we're hungry for them. But irrigation is the best case scenario, but we grew so many of them, planting every week, 1,200 a week, that it just was not worthy, and we just found that it wasn't even really necessary in our growing conditions. And that's the key thing that everybody has to remember. I just want to say that for just a minute. When I say things, that's what works for us here in my growing conditions. That is part of becoming a stellar flower farmer. You have to not learn what Lisa does. You have to learn what those conditions are or what they need. What does that plant really, really need, and how do I get that in my conditions, right? So it's a gauge, kind of learning from other people and what they do. And that's why we are big believers in my courses and when I teach webinars and different things. The saying that we have is that I don't give you fish, I teach you how to fish. I give you the equation to figure out for you, because as many people as are on this live right now have as many different conditions, right? So that's what we have to figure out. Lisa, has your team ever considered selling Lizianthus plugs in smaller quantities for the home gardener? It's hard to find companies that sell them in small quantities. No, we aren't actually licensed to sell plants, but I will tell you, who you need to send that message to is Daniel at Petal Pickers. He does ship plants or bulbs and flowers, live stuff. His whole team is set up for that. It's Petal Pickers. DM him and said, Lisa said you might be selling Lizianthus plugs in small quantities, and plant that seed with him because he buys tons of Lizianthus and he also ships. So he would be the one. The only one that I'm aware of that sells like home gardener version is Park Seed, I think it is. And we also sell the seed now. Starting the seed is painful, long, and slow, but it is definitely possible. So that can be your backup too. When you talk covers, is the frost cloth what you're talking about? Yes, and I only use one weight of, it's called floating row cover, or it's called row cover is the name of all frost cloth. That's kind of a general tool. Calling it a frost cloth isn't very accurate because it's used for so many other things. So we call it row cover. And the one that we sell is actually termed floating row cover because it is so lightweight. It is literally made so that it can actually lay right on top of plants for a short period of time, meaning you can use it for short-term use without even hoops under it. And that's how I used it, for the first 10 years that I used it. Then I learned about hoops and how much better it was for my plants, and I could use it for longer periods of time and for lots of other uses. So yes, it's Ag 19, and that is what we're talking about when we talk about covers. Should you put eucalyptus directly on the heat mat or on a cookie cooling rack? Great question, Dee. We put it directly on because it's truly a warm season plant. So we put it straight on the seedling heat mat, not on a cookie cooling rack. Is there anything you would recommend direct seeding early spring, or is everything you are starting inside? So, Mimo, we don't direct seed. Wait a minute, it says I lost something here. We don't direct seed anything in early spring or even spring and summer for that fact. I mean, I do all transplants. The reason you would not direct seed at this time of the year or even up until spring is it's just too cool outside. You can certainly sow seeds, but they just sit out there and wait for the conditions that they need to sprout. And let me just tell you about all the trouble they can get into while they're waiting to sprout. First off, waterlogging is one, getting just so much spring rain. It rains and rains, but it's not warm enough for them to sprout, so they just sit there and rot. Insects can carry them off. There's just so many things that can actually happen to seeds that are just sitting out in the garden. And then you also really, I mean, the reason you would sow something early like now, like for cool flower purposes, is you want to make the most out of the cool flower concept. Well, the cool flower concept is for them to be rooting in while the cool weather is out there, and you miss that opportunity by direct seeding now. So we transplant everything. However, I will tell you that in soil blocks, you can sprout stuff indoors, and then you can plant them out as really, really young little sprouts out in the garden because you can handle the blocks. I just did that with carrots and radishes and peas because it's too cool outside. I know that they'll take the cold, but they won't sprout at this cold. So I sprouted them inside and then took them out and planted them. Pretty awesome. All right, last question. So this is a good last question. First time starting seeds this year. Congratulations. When do you turn off the heat mats on seedlings? So heat mats seedling heat mats have built-in thermostats. And that thermostat that's built into the heat mat is keyed off of the air temperature. And that's why it's so important to have the right temperature of the air to get your heat mat to heat up properly. So our heat mats are on 24/7, meaning around the clock, as long as we have seeds on them. They control themselves. And the only time we turn our heat mat off, our heat mat literally stays on until we stop seed starting in December. We only take December off. So it's off for a month, and then it's plugged right back in. So I don't know if that answers your question. So friends, remember to join me at 2 o'clock inside the Gardener's Workshop live shop app. Get the phone app. Not sure why y'all aren't on there. It's really a lot of fun. And today's show from the warehouse is shorter. We have a big show on Friday at 12 noon. Today's show is at 2 o'clock. And I'm going to be highlighting and showing, because it's going to be, we've never done it before. Last week was the first week, right? I'm going to be going down the aisles in the warehouse and picking up stuff and talking to you about it. Some of my favorite things like, are you ready for pruning? Wait till you see. Last week, Suzanne and I shot a video, and I used something that saved my butt, and I'll talk to you all about that. But join me, go to the phone app, download the app, grab, an afternoon beverage or something. It's like 60 degrees here. If I wasn't here with you all, I'd be outside. You can sit outside and watch me on your phone. But we'll have some fun, and then I will see you again on Friday at 12 noon inside the app for the big show that comes from the farm, where we are going to be talking about some really fun stuff. Can't tell you yet. They keep telling me I can't share secrets, y'all. So, friends, thanks so much for joining me here today. And the thing you can do that helps me the most, helps us just to keep on giving you guys all this content, is to like and share us, to follow me on social media, both here on Instagram and Facebook, but more importantly, on our YouTube channel. Over on our YouTube channel, our Seed Talk podcast we have 2 podcasts now, Field and Garden and Seed Talk. We have videos over there. I do seed starting Saturdays. There's just tons of fun stuff over there. Go over there and subscribe, and we'd love for you to join us. So, friends, I'm going to go take a breath before I start again at 2 p.m. Eastern Time today inside the Gardener's Workshop live shop. Thanks for joining me, friends. Ciao.